Hey, Your Black World family. Hey, Breaking Brown family. It's Yvette Carnell coming to you again. And I want to have a quick conversation with you about what it kind of means to be African American. I had a conversation last week about the conversation that I had with Antonio Moore about how there's no black wealth in the black community. Like, this idea of black wealth is just basically about, black people who drive nice cars or went to nice schools, but that's not black wealth. That might be, that can be a status symbol, but that is not wealth. Status symbols in and of themselves are not wealth. Wealth is money. Wealth is dollars. And wealth is not relative. Wealth is, if you're in America, wealth is comparable to white dollars. And in that sense, we don't have any real wealth. So I was talking to this guy back and forth on Twitter, and we're going back and forth about black wealth. And at the end, he comes to me, he says something that I found very interesting that I've heard a lot in the black community, which is, he says, well, these white people are not going to give us anything. So, you're looking to government, but that's just a handout from the white man. And this is this sort of rhetoric, this sort of, Pan-African, I guess, black nationalist probably, rhetoric that just really kind of bothers me, in the sense of, you have so many black people who kind of view themselves as exiles. I've had black people tell me I view myself as a refugee or a fugitive in this country. I don't view myself as an African American. I view myself as like an African refugee. And I think, and I want to be careful here, because what I want to say is that if you are one of the people who views yourself in that way, here's what I want to say. There are a lot of black people, African Americans, who have gone to Ghana and built a life there, and I think that's wonderful. I think we should have a special relationship with people in African countries, be it Ghana, especially Liberia, Nigeria, wherever. I think that's a good thing. I think to view yourself as a person who views like the planet, as the planet is like we're all one people, and we're all connected. I think that's a wonderful thing as well. Go right ahead. But if you're here in this country as an African American, and if you have no plans to relocate to Ghana, no real plans, if this just exists as like a dream in your own mind, I really don't understand how you are seeing yourself as not African American. And when I say African American, I'm emphasizing American. Like, this is your home. And not only is this your home, I would say that in a lot of ways, we're more American than a lot of people who came afterwards. A lot of immigrants, Irish immigrants, all these other people. Like, in terms of our contribution, we're more American than they are. In a lot of ways. So this idea of like, where you live out this fantasy in your own mind that you're not American, that you're African, I think it's kind of detrimental, because I think it leads us to kind of view ourselves as like people on the outside, as opposed to people who are American and who are very much invested in what happens in America. So when I say I think we should get what's owed to us from the government in terms of policy initiatives to help us, because the wealth from slavery is still here. The poverty from slavery is still in the economy as well. And that's not going to go away. You can't, there's no amount of willpower, or there's no amount of drive that's going to just banish that from the economy. So when I say that, what I'm really saying is, when I say that we should really accept ourselves as Americans, I'm saying we should own all of it. We should own who we are as African Americans. I mean, I would even go so far as to say, when we do college admissions, you shouldn't be able to mark black or African American, because you have a lot of people who coming from countries like Nigeria who are black, but they aren't African American. They don't have a history in this country. And things like affirmative action were meant to kind of deal with that specific to kind of redress that specifically. So I think we should continue to, address ourselves as African Americans so that we can get what was owed to us, as African Americans. And I don't think that other people, even if they're black, should necessarily have access to that. And I think, though, you're not going anywhere. Like most people, if you have a plan to go to relocate to Ghana or wherever, by all means. But if that's not the case, from my vantage point, you're kind of living in like this dream world, which I don't think it helps anybody for you to live from that point of view that, I'm not American. Well, what are you then? You go back generations here. You're invested here. So to pretend that, well, I don't care about what happened. This ain't my country. Well, yeah, it is your country. Where you gonna go, Negro? Like, where do you plan on? Are you going to Switzerland? Where are you going? Are you going to live in Nigeria? And if you go to these countries, please understand that culturally, there's a lot that you won't have in common with them, even though they're black. Just because you're black and you have pigment doesn't mean that you're culturally connected to people in other countries, to other black people. You're not. You probably have more in terms of you just watched Steph Curry in the game last week, just like a bunch of white boys did. You have a lot culturally in common with them. So I think we have to own it. Like, we're American. A lot of what was African American culture too now is American culture. So for me, I think owning that is a good space to be politically, because when you own something, you're invested in it. You're invested in what happens to it. So you're invested in what happens to America. You're invested in what happens to your brothers and sisters who live in America. Instead of saying, they're not going to do anything for us. What are we going to do? I think that's sort of an apathetic, posture. And especially when we're living in a space where we really do need government to do something. Without a huge infusion of cash from government, I mean, we're kind of baked. There are not a lot of spaces to go. Certainly not enough resources for us to kind of do for self and build industries and, factories and means of distribution. We don't have that. So we have to understand that, listen, more than probably anyone else, this is our America. Free labor from us, built capitalism that built this country. This is our country. So I'm probably, most people are probably not going to permanently relocate to other countries. If that's the case for you, own that you're American and own that you are invested in what happens in this country. Stop talking about, this country ain't never did nothing for me. So, okay, what does that mean? Does that mean this is not your country? It means that this is your country, but it's kind of messed up. And when something is kind of messed up, you have to put some skin in the game to trying to fix it. To just say that this is not your country is just a lie. It's just a lie you tell yourself to make yourself feel better. It is our country. It is our country more than than it is the country of immigrants who came, in the 19th century or whenever. This is our country, and I think it's time that we kind of own that it's ours, and we have just as much right to all of the fruits of our labor as anyone else. One of the most awful things about being an African American is that we're living in the richest country in the world. And we're not getting it. We're living in the richest country in the world. We gave this country, our ancestors gave this country our free labor, and we're still poor. That's a problem. And you're not going to solve that problem by saying, I don't consider this my country. No, it's just like a childlike response. It is what it is. This is who we are. This is where we are. It doesn't really matter at this point how we got here, with the exception of the fact that we got here and they put us in chains. And then they had laws specifically to subordinate us. I don't know what other community that happened to. That happened to us here in America, and America has to pay the price for that, and America has to give us specific redress for that. So I think, we have to own that we're Americans and own what that means that we're African Americans and what that means in terms of what we're owed and where we go going forward. So